We're live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the October 17th, 2022 meeting of the Governance Committee of the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees. The meeting is held in person with committee members participating remotely. At this time, I will conduct a roll call attendance to determine if a quorum is present. Please clearly respond present via WebEx or present in person when your name is called. Courtney Nicolato, I am here and present via WebEx. Jay Placencia.
Here, present via WebEx.
Charlie Fogarty.
Present via WebEx.
Mike McNally.
Present via WebEx.
Margot Cook. Mark Palange.
Present via WebEx.
And Bethany Jenkins.
Present via WebEx.
Thank you. A quorum is present and I'll call the meeting to order. A reminder to all members for the benefit of our audience and the note taker, please clearly identify yourself whenever you comment, make a motion or a second to a motion. Participants using WebEx today are required to keep their cameras on, as remote members and all other persons present at the meeting location must be clearly audible and visible to each other. At this time, I would like to acknowledge that the University of Rhode Island occupies the traditional homeland of the Narragansett Nation and the Niantic people. I'd also like to thank our fellow committee member, Barbara Cottom, for her nearly 3 years of service to the URI Board of Trustees and congratulate her on a wonderful new position at the U.S. Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C. Barbara has been a tremendous advocate for the advancement of quality education in Rhode Island, and I know I speak for all of us that she will be missed in this group. Are there any proposed amendments to the published agenda? Hearing none, I will make one. We're going to change the order just a little bit today. Everything that's on our agenda will be covered, but we will go to number 1 items and then number 3, the action items, and then we will come back to the discussion items shortly after that. So can I have a motion that the Governance Committee agenda, including the proposed amendment, be secured? Can I have a motion?
Jay Placencia.
A second?
Charlie Fogarty.
Great. I heard Charlie first. Thank you,
Second.
Charlie. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote for the approval of the agenda and the proposed amendment, or the amendment. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion for our agenda is approved. The next is the approval of the minutes from June 17th, 2022 committee meeting. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion. This is Jay Placencia.
Charlie Fogarty, second.
Thanks, everyone. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I will ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion to approve the minutes of June 17th, 2022 meeting of the Governance Committee is approved. The next is the minutes from the September 14th, 2022 minutes. May I have a motion that the Governance Committee approve the minutes of its September 14th, 2022 committee meeting?
Charlie Fogarty, so moved.
Mike McNally, second.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion to approve the minutes of September 14th, 2022 meeting of the Governance Committee is approved. The next item is item number 3, which are action items. And so we have a number of action items about policy updates to be made, as well as a review of amendments to our bylaws and a recommendation on all of these items to the Board of Trustees. The first item is the review of the URI Board of Trustees policy on reporting violations of law, regulation, university policy, and procedure. And we will be making our vote to be a recommendation to the URI Board of Trustees. And I'm going to ask Assistant Vice President Kara Larson to provide an explanation on the agenda item. Kara?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. As you all are aware, this is a holdover from the September 14th meeting. Just to recap sort of the procedural history, this policy went through the university's policy development process and was at the Administrative Policy Committee June 7th meeting, where it was approved for recommendation to the board. And so I will now just go through very briefly what this policy is designed to do. As you're already aware, the board has approved policies on non-discrimination, policies prohibiting sexual misconduct. And so my staff did an analysis of other types of misconduct or issues that we needed a methodology for reporting on and for resolving. And so that is the genesis of this policy, is to fill those sort of gaps that aren't covered by our other policies on non-discrimination and sexual misconduct. So this is about any violation of law, regulation, or university policy and procedure. I recognize that's a mouthful, but no other title really fit the bill for accuracy and precision. And so this provides various avenues for members of the university community, whether it be faculty, staff, board, affiliates, to bring to the university's attention misconduct that would not otherwise fall within the policies that we already have. For instance, it could address things like, questions about financial misconduct, research-related misconduct, although we also have a separate policy on reporting research misconduct as well. It describes reporting methodology. It describes our confidential hotline, which is a web-based and phone-based method for making these reports, and that can also be made anonymously, although it does caution that our ability to maybe respond could be impacted if it's anonymous. It describes briefly the investigation process, and we do have a procedure document that goes into a lot of depth on how the complaints are processed. And that will be posted, if this is approved, that will be posted on our policy webpage along with this policy. And then the last thing it discusses is confidentiality. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to go into more detail if you need it.
Thank you, Kara. And just as a reminder that the governance committee has seen this before, we've done an initial review, and so this is the final review before we recommend to the trustees. So any questions or comments for Kara? All right, I see the shaking of heads. That seems like we're good. Thank you, Kara. So I'm going to ask for a vote. So may I have a motion that the governance committee recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the URI Board of Trustees policy on reporting violations of law, regulation, or university policy and procedure as recommended and presented in enclosure 3A?
So moved, Jay Placencia.
Charlie Fogarty, second.
Thanks so much, Jay and Charlie. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. The next item B, 3B, is a review of amendments to the URI Board of Trustees policy on trademarks, licensing, and this will be a recommendation to the URI Board of Trustees. I'm going to refer this item to Dr. Dan Muse, who's going to provide an explanation on the agenda item. Dan?
Thank you. So this policy that's in front of you today, or the draft that you have in front of you today, this is an existing policy, and this is a scheduled review of the existing policy. In a nutshell, this policy is designed to promote and protect the university's brand standards by ensuring proper usage of its name and symbols. And one thing that's important here is that this policy focuses on operational trademarks and insignia. It does not cover trademarks and licensing relative to intellectual property developed at the university through research and development. That's covered in the intellectual property policy. So this is about operational marks. This particular draft you have in front of you has had extensive review by Ellen Reynolds, as well as Paul Whitney, the administrator of the bookstore. He's responsible for much of the legwork for the licensing approvals, and also Thor Bjorn. It's also reviewed by the members of the licensing committee. And then it was vetted by the Administrative Policy Review Group, which includes the president of the Faculty Senate. And then finally, this draft was sent to the Administrative Policy Committee last week, who approved the draft to come to this group. Sort of as a side note there, I just wanted to note that that extensive vetting process and the numerous eyes that get on the drafts of the policy is a standard practice for policy review for administrative policies here. Now, the only material change to this policy from the current version is that now in this version, authorized signatories for the university can allow non-commercial use of URI marks for vendors wishing to identify URI as a partner or as a collaborator. This is usually part of a contract. This is language that often appears in contracts. So that's the only material change. Additionally, in conversations that we had with Ellen, we determined that the VPSA can delegate approval authority, which is already in the draft of the policy, but that person can delegate the authority, but the process for delegation is going to be covered in the policy's procedures. I'm happy to take any questions on this.
Thanks, Dan. Any questions? Just one procedural thing. I just want to make sure that in the upcoming meetings that are happening for various committees, that the policies that are relevant to those committees, that we're letting those groups know as an FYI.
Okay.
I want to make sure that folks are aware before they go to the board that this is happening. So if they have any questions, they can make sure that they come to you, Kara and Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yep. So hearing none, may I have a motion that the governance committee recommend to the Board of Trustees the amendments to the URI Board of Trustees policy on trademarks and licensing as recommended and presented in enclosure 3B.
Mike McCanley, so moved.
Thanks, Mike. Can I get a second?
Fogarty, second.
Thanks, Charlie. Any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion approves. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Kara. The next item, item 3C, is a review of amendments to the board bylaws and a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. I'm going to ask Alyssa to share the details. Oh, Alyssa, you're on mute.
Yep, no, I was just saying I'm about to unmute. So that's why you can hear me say it. So these are the bylaws that have been presented or shared in the past. We did end up holding on those at one point because the governor had not yet approved the legislation that supported the changes in those. So they were reviewed at that time. And then again, were deferred after the September meeting. So you should all be familiar with many of these changes. The changes related to appointment reflect the governance structure that was approved in the statutory change signed into law by the governor. And effectively, it makes it so that all of the board positions are appointed versus half of them being elected by the board itself. We changed section 1.2D to specifically reference degree revocation as well as granting of degrees. We added in section 2.1 the president as an ex officio member of the board, which is also from the statute. We added the change in 2.3 to have 1-year terms for the student member, since it really restricted our ability to have like juniors or seniors, or juniors anyway, as board members, because we had the 2-year term. We added in due consideration of recommendations with respect to removal decisions by the governor in section 2.6. A major change for us that's helpful is in 3.2, changing a quorum to majority as opposed to 13, and also made it clear with language there that remote participants are considered present. We eliminated the parliamentary procedures reference in 3.11. This is not from the statute. This is just a recommendation that we made to not incorporate Robert's Rules of Orders because they have a lot of arcane rules that most people don't even realize are there. And then on 5.4, we made explicit that the chair and vice chair are voting members on committees. That wasn't clear in the wording of the bylaws before. And then we're also changing it right now because we had language with respect to voting by the board that says it's a majority now, it was 13 before, but a majority of voting members is a quorum. For committees, it just said a majority of members, so the interpretation had always been it's voting and non-voting. So that's been changed to clarify it now to say it's a majority of voting members also for committees. So once these bylaws are changed, we're going to be changing how we count our quorum for our committees to only count voting members for the quorum purposes. And then the final change, that's a new change since what you saw before, is just a clarifying change. There are 2 references in the bylaws to an academic strategic plan. And since we actually have just a strategic plan now, we're calling it just strategic plan. So we've eliminated the word academic in 2 places.
Great. Thank you, Alyssa. Any questions?
Yeah, Courtney, I have one for Alyssa. Maybe it will happen later, but there is discussion of changing or deleting one of our standing committees that's still listed here. Do we just wait till is that still in there because we officially haven't done it?
So yeah, there has not been a vote to actually eliminate a committee. So we would need to actually bring that change forward if that committee is referenced in the bylaws. The bylaws actually don't list all the committees out. So which one are you?
Yeah, University Advancement and Community and External Affairs.
Yeah, and it's on the top of page 9, Alyssa.
Yeah, so there hasn't been a vote to eliminate that yet. So no, we did not remove it. But
Well, I guess we can amend it when we do it, I guess.
And so just to clarify with you, Alyssa, in order for us to sunset that committee, it will need a formal vote.
you'd need a formal vote to recommend that change, correct?
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions for Alyssa on the bylaws changes? All right. Hearing none, may I have a motion that the governance committee recommend that the Board of Trustees approve amendments to the board's bylaws as recommended and presented in enclosure 3C.
So moved, J.
Excuse me, I'm
Placencia.
sorry. I think that you could certainly, if you want to make that change now, I don't see why you couldn't recommend that change in the bylaws be added and recommend it now. And we could simply make that change in the version that goes to the board.
I like it.
If you want to move to approve it with that additional change, we can do that now.
Mike, any
Elizabeth?
thoughts?
Yeah, I think Courtney, I think Margot's pretty. I think it's basically a done deal, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think we save a step by just knocking it out of there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we can make that amendment.
I'll make that change and I will get that to Michelle for the version that goes to the board package.
Great. So we'll recommend that the Board of Trustees approve amendments, including the additional amendment of taking out the university advancement and engagement out of the list of committees on the top of page 9, as recommended and presented in enclosure 3C. So I can get a motion?
Yeah, Mike McNally, so moved.
Thanks, Mike.
Charlie Fogarty, second.
Thanks, Charlie. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes. Yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. All right, that is section 3. We're going to move back to section 2.
I apologize. I have to leave now, but we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
All right, so 2A is supportive of a charter change for academic affairs and the research committee. And so this is enclosure 2A. And so I'm going to actually pull that up. Make sure I have it. Let's see. And just, Michelle, for your benefit, just to know, Board Effect does not have all these attachments in it for some reason for me. I don't know if it's a viewing issue or what, but I'm going to the public document and I can see everything here. All right, so you'll see in red the charter additions that have been made. And this has been reviewed and discussed within the committee itself. There was some comments that we made last meeting to make sure that Neil and the team were looking into. And it's also in addition to conversations that we had at the board retreat, specifically around the need for us to have a greater focus around sponsored research, and specifically ensuring research has a strong perspective and conversation in this committee itself. So you'll see here, there's been some changes on the bottom of page 1 that's around including in receiving and evaluating reports from the provost and the vice president of research and economic development on specifically on the advancement of the strategic plan, the performance of the schools and colleges related to sponsored research is included. Metrics and key performance indicators on sponsored research has been included. Additional, continued collaboration with the URI Research Foundation and the work of this committee, and then specifically understanding infrastructure in supporting grant and contract proposal development. And I think our quest for and ask for Rhode Islanders to consider voting yes on one is such a great example where it's so important for us to have the right facilities in order for being competitive related to our research needs and our ability to support the blue economy here in the state of Rhode Island. And so that is aligned here within the charter. And then a continued enhancement around economic development and how our academic and research work is aligned with that. And so I'll ask, is there any questions or comments on the charter?
I just want probably for Alyssa, this one says strategic plan, which I don't know how we did that. We got the wording right in this one. I don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we have been doing is a strategic plan. I think probably when the original bylaws were drafted, what was happening was an academic strategic plan, but what we have been doing since then is a strategic plan versus an academic strategic plan. So we just wanted to bring the wording in the bylaws up to date with the actual practice.
Yep. No, I love the changes. I mean, it puts the focus on research, which we all are interested in kind of watching closely, and it's an important duty of the board, I think.
Agreed. Any other questions, Jay? You feel good about where we are? Bethany, you're in this every day. Do you feel comfortable with what's been noted?
Trying to unmute. Thanks, Courtney, for asking. I think it looks great, and particularly just keeping an eye on the necessary and for support the research enterprise. And so that's really what I've been hearing the most from my faculty colleagues. I was really pleased to see that included. It looks good.
Great. Awesome.
One of the things I know, Courtney, that Margot is very interested in doing is actually this is so important, is taking some of this task and giving it to a special committee to work on getting us figured out where we are with research and that kind of stuff. But I think she'll propose that at the board meeting.
Yep, I agree, and we'll touch a little bit on that today. Margot is not able to make this meeting, but did mention that we'll share a little bit more of the details of what she's thinking about, and she'll give us the full details when we are together next. But Michelle, do we need a vote or approval on this or anything?
No, I just noted it as discussion only.
Okay. Great. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, if there was any feedback before the Academic Affairs and Research Committee meeting, which is scheduled for October 31st, we could pass that on as a result of today's meeting.
Great. Yeah, I think everyone's in support of the direction that it's going for sure. Wonderful. Discussion item 2B is around the 2022 URI Board of Trustees evaluation of board and individual performance. We're not going to go into individual performance in a public meeting, my opinion. I think it's really important that we have discussions with our board members, and if there's any issues with participation, et cetera, that we're having those routinely. But we did do our self-assessment. All of us, we had a great group. We had 16 responses to the self-assessment. And we had a number of different areas where we have narrative that's been created. And I will tell you, I'm not going to go. This is a very long document, so we can spend all day talking about the details. But a little, a couple of things just to highlight. The board does feel, one, I think everyone really shared their excitement for Mark and supporting Mark through his transition, which he's done beautifully in getting his footing and making sure that the board has everything he needs from the board. So there was lots of conversation around that. There was a lot of conversation about our participation as board members. And so thinking about our committees, making sure that we have the right amount of people in our committees, that everybody is able to contribute and be active in their participation was a big theme that I heard amongst the narrative that was shared. Many of the board members, and I think this is no surprise, want to be helpful outside of the boardroom. And so how board members can be involved in things that we're thinking about, our relationships with our great government partners, or events at the school, or supporting Lil and our alumni engagement work. There's a resounding continuation of yes, please, we're here to help. So I think the marching orders to our URI teammates here is use us as much as you want. It sounds like there's lots of interest in doing that. And I think we've done a good job over the last year working with our board members, our trustees, to make sure that they are engaged and involved in and outside of the boardroom. There was lots of conversations around board materials. One of the things that I want to share is Margot, Michelle, and I are working through how to really hone in those board materials. 350 pages of board materials will not happen again, rest assured. And really creating a mechanism to which board members have what they need, but at the same time, not inundating us with information. I think there's a distinctive difference between what committees might need, because they are charged with going into the detail and really making sure that we have our insights, and what the board of directors needs. So thinking through that process, learning from others is something that I wanted to share that we've made a commitment to doing over the course of the next year. And I think there was lots of conversation to say, let's be brief summary, highlighting major points. There's lots of that conversation. Alyssa?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one mention of that particular meeting had the purchasing regulations.
Yeah.
Which
Understood.
were very long, and the board actually did need to receive the full purchasing regulations because the board was approving them and they are board regulations. So I think that was an unusually long attachment, but there was really no way to simply have the board approve a summary. The board had to actually see the regulations. So hopefully we can certainly bring down the size in future, because it would be very rare that you would be approving large sets of regulations like that.
Yeah, understood. I would even say 120 pages is too long, right? So, I think that, yes, purchasing that happens, but, to give an example, one of the things that I've mentioned to Michelle for us to think about is when, for tenure, we do not need the note from provost to president and faculty senate to president to, you know what I mean? We can, let's make them more summary based and make sure we highlight the great things that professor is for achieving tenure. It does not need to be all of it, right? So those are the types of things that I think we should hone in on and make sure that we can make it as usable and also just as effective as possible. So yeah, lots of opportunity.
That's a great example, Courtney. Like for instance, the committee may want, it would be appropriate for the committee to want more detail. Maybe they don't even want that much, but to take all the information that the committees get and give it forward to the board, we lose the effectiveness, the efficiency of having committees. So
yeah, agreed.
No reason to do that.
Yeah, I think I think there's a distinctive difference between what we receive here right, versus what they'll receive at board. And so, yeah, we'll work to figure that out. I think this is just part of growing as a board too, right? So it was great that we got that feedback. It was great that we see an opportunity, and I appreciate the team for putting our brains together to figure that one out. There was lots of conversation in the self-assessment, specifically around the board wanting to be engaged in the strategic plan, proactively want to be involved in the process, want to be involved as we think about KPIs and metrics surrounding the plan. And so that was definitely mentioned numerous times in here in the board. There was also, we talked about the most stimulating. So folks shared what they are thinking about what's the most stimulating part of our job and the least stimulating part of the job. And in 2021, a lot of people said the most stimulating was hiring Mark, and the most stimulating for many in 2022 was getting Mark in the loop in the university, supporting his transition and his onboarding. Lots of people loved faculty and student presentations and interactions. That was there was more pleas across the board in conversations. Folks really want to have more strategic conversations. Governing is, yes, we know we have to do it, but we really want to have great conversations and tap into the excellent subject matter expertise that's in the room. And then least stimulating, I think that there was some conversations about, least stimulating. There was some conversations around how we can do a better job in informing folks before we talk about something that maybe isn't their subject matter expertise. Cybersecurity is a great example, helping folks understand what the state is of cybersecurity, especially if folks aren't in that world. And so thinking about how we might be able to prep folks when we want to have those discussions so that they feel more prepared. And then your typical stuff. It's part of a lot of things that were noted as least stimulating, I would argue. Nothing we can do about it. It's part of our job as the entity, a fiduciary agent, organization, governing entity for the university. So, but great responses, great feedback. Really appreciate folks' perspective. The other thing that just wanted to note is, we are thinking about, and actually, you know what? Let me stop there because I'm going to mention that in another item. So any questions on the evaluation or the self-assessment, Mark?
Thanks, Courtney. Just a reminder, of course, formally, the board approves the strategic plan that will come up in at the next meeting. I was grateful, Mike, for your feedback on the plan. So thank you the other day. It's worthwhile for folks to have a chance to read, again, the overall university-wide strategic plan.
Yep, agreed. And that reminds me, thank you, Mark. I have feedback to give you. I will make sure you have it in the next few days. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Courtney.
Yeah, you got it. All right, moving on to item C is we also, at the same time, we've been busy. We did the Board of Trustees composition matrix survey, and I'll ask Jay to provide the results for that.
Very good, thank you. So before I get into the details, just wanted to thank Michelle publicly for helping us organize all of this data. And I think what we have in place now is a document that we can use, for the next 20 years. So thank you for your help there, Michelle. And Mike, you also gave me some good nuggets of info. So thanks for your help in getting that, information to help us sort of craft this document. So I guess I'll start by saying, as you guys all know, we started a process to keep track of the characteristics, the population of our board of directors. And while we have no control over who gets on the board, we at least can keep track of, what we have and what we'd like to aspire to have. And at this point, we really don't have any, gaping holes, but I want to go through some of the changes that we've had over the last couple of years, since we've only done this twice so far. Our goal is 100% participation. The last year in 2020, 2021, we had think 22 members and only 19 responses. And, excuse me, I'm sorry, in 2020 and 2021, we had 21 members and 18 responses. And then in 2022, we had 22 members and 19 responses. Say that all in one breath. As far as changes to the board in 2020, 2021, as you know, the only change that we had was we lost CC and we replaced her with Neil Kerwin. And this last year, we had a few changes. So we had Tim Del Giudice, who we replaced with David Caprio, May Ray with Bethany, and Chris with Hannah. And although there's small changes, if you will, because of the size of the board, it makes a difference as it relates to percentages and changes to the composition of the board. So I'll start just by, going through some of these. We had 11 questions, and what I would say is if there's anything else that we should be adding, this is a working document that we'd like everyone's feedback on, but I'll just share a couple of the responses and the changes over the last couple of years. So one of the questions was, are we URI alum? And in 2020, we had about 66% who were, and in 2022, we have 70 who were, so that's to the positive. We also kept track of, in-state versus out-of-state. The numbers went from 72 in-state to 65 out-of-state, in-state, excuse me, in 2022. As far as the age range of the board, there were some changes there, but really just shows that the board is getting older. As far as the gender composition in 2020, female composition was 44% versus 22. Now it's down to 40. And again, one change makes a major difference as it relates to percentages. Another question was around whether you're Latino or not. 2020, we had 11% that were identified as yes. In 2022, we had 15% who identified as Latino, which is a positive, right? And as far as African Americans concerned, we had in 2020, we had 6%. In 2022, we have 15% who identified as African American. So the numbers are changing, obviously. One major thing that I talked to Courtney Michelle about before was, so for example, we had one of the questions being, what is your disability status? In 2020, we had 5.6% of the board that identified as disabled. In 2022, we have 0. And then another question was around whether we are protected veterans. And in 2020, we had 0. In 2022, we have 5%. So the number is moving to our advantage, to the positive. One final thing that I wanted to mention around the skill sets that I thought was pretty interesting was 80% of our board identifies as executive leadership material, which is, I thought, pretty great. 55% have experience in strategic planning. So hopefully the board, those folks helped Mark with his plan. 55% of the board identified as having interest in PR, 40% of the board in fundraising, and 45% of the board in budgeting. So hopefully, Lil, you took note of that, and we have 40% of the board who want to help in fundraising. That's the bulk of the major questions. What I would say is we probably should be adding a few more questions to this, being that it was nice and short and sweet. Any questions as it relates to the questions that were asked, or any thoughts or comments for me on this composition matrix?
No, I think this is great, and I'm excited that we can monitor it over time. I think, it is important and we'll talk about it later in the agenda, but we do provide an annual report to the governor every year on board performance, our accomplishments, and I think it would be helpful to provide some of this data as well.
Right, agreed. Well, very good. Well, that is my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. The next item on the agenda is around succession planning for board members. I want to share a little bit about more committee structure here, and then make a call to action for all of us, as well as for our fellow board members. So I will make this call to action for them as well. So let's talk first about committees. And so based on the conversations that we had at the board retreat, based on some of the things that you see in the academic affairs, updated charter, Margot and Mike and Mark and others have been doing a great job thinking about how do we make sure that we're putting more time into key areas that as a board, we want to ensure that we're paying the utmost attention to. And so Margot is working through the final details, but we're looking at special committees for 2 of the priority areas that we've talked about. One is sponsored research, and one is real estate. And so obviously we hold a considerable amount of real estate, and we know that there's opportunities to continue to optimize that. And so those are 2 special committees that are being looked at. Special committees in the bylaws are appointed and created by the chair. And so Margot is working through the details on that. Additionally, we are looking at sunsetting the University Advancement and Engagement Committee, as we just talked about, continuing to keep a very tight collaboration with URI Foundation and Alumni Engagement. And so we do anticipate potentially continuing that connection in some way. And I know Margot and Lil have been talking through that and thinking through that. Because of the sunsetting of that group and because of the special committees that we're looking to create, we are looking at our committee structures to make sure that, one, everybody has a variety of committees that of interest and their expertise, but also where we need additional support on committees. And so Margot is working through that. We're thinking through those. Those, again, committee appointments are appointed by our chair. And so we're anticipating she'll have additional things to share in November. And our hope is that we'll be moving forward on a new structure shortly after that. So wanted to give the group an update. That's a lot of balls in motion currently. But I love the thoughtfulness that's being put into the process. So really appreciate it. The call to action on succession planning is one of the things that we talked about at earlier meetings that I think is really necessary, is starting to put a list of potential folks for the governor's consideration together. And so we've created a form that we'd like every board member to provide 2 recommendations. And so at the board meeting in November, we'll be, and actually before the meeting in November, we'll push that form again, but really taking our time and being thoughtful about who we think will be a great fit. Again, it's not ours to choose, but having a group and suggestions is always helpful to have with us. Any questions on that?
So Courtney, will you, who collects those? How do we get
Yeah. And so Michelle, we have that form created, correct?
Yes.
So we'll share a link, Mike, with the form that folks can put it in, and then we'll follow up for additional insights after that.
That's great.
And Courtney, this form is going to be online as well, so that just anyone can.
Correct. Yep, that was the plan. Yep. So we'll work through the details on that. All right. The next item on the agenda is 2E, which is the preparation of the 2022 URI Board of Trustees annual report. And so we're really grateful to Linda Achardo, who had supported us in putting together, I think, what was a great report in talking about the incredible highlights and accomplishments, our points of pride of the board and what we have done in support of the URI community, as well as a list of board members who are expiring, what the timeline looks like, et cetera, so that we can give the governor the best information possible as he and his team are considering reappointments or potential new members. For everybody, I know everybody knows, but just as a reminder, all of us are expired as of February 1st, 2023. And so our hope is to put a report in front of the governor shortly before the new year. I think that's about the time frame that we did it last year as well. And so that we can work with their team, think through next steps. Obviously, we would love to get Senate appointments and consent done earlier in the year rather than later. And so this report kind of is our opportunity to use that as the, catapult to those conversations. And so I know that each of the members of this group had an opportunity to look at it. It's also in enclosure 2E, but Matt is a newbie to this report, obviously, and there you go, I like it, and wanted to see if there's any thoughts or feedback on the report from last year and what we might want to consider for this year's edition.
I'll just comment, Courtney. I think it's really good. I think that I think it's good. I think it's really important because a lot of people don't know what we do, and this is in a very brief period of time they could kind of understand that who we are and what we do.
Agreed.
No, I love this report. I would just say that the pictures probably have to be updated, but other than that, it looks great.
Yep, agreed. All right. And so if we have any additional feedback or comments, if we could get that to Matt, I'll ask board members as well. I'll mention it to the executive committee at our executive committee meeting. Any thoughts and feedback, we'll get that to Michelle and to Matt. All right.
I'll just say you've got a ready partner, so.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you. Well, good. And then, all right, 2F is a review of the succession planning for university officers. And so I will pass that along to Mark.
Thanks, Courtney. So let's see, I will highlight, first of all, we are looking for provost and vice president for student affairs. So I would say both searches are going well. We are continuing the process, and certainly the provost search has been longer, but we are hopeful. We'll see how that goes. I'm hoping that we can announce something sooner than later there. And for the vice president of student affairs, that's going well. We have, of course, the search firm Isaacson and Miller, who's helping us with both searches. Thor Bjorn is chairing the search for the student affairs, and the feedback is that that's looking very promising. We have 4 dean searches ongoing. So we have the business college, we are having the libraries, dean of libraries, the dean of pharmacy. We'll have to start. Paul Larrett has announced his intention to step down next year. And well, and I should say we have an excellent interim dean of SEPS, and Danielle Dennis. She's doing an awesome job, and we'll begin that process probably next year formally. The only other things, we are looking for an AVP in finance, and we have an interim vice provost for global engagement. And we'll, and again, Christine Johnson, in that case, she's doing a marvelous job. But we'll go through a formal search process.
Great. Encouraged. It sounds like the 2 positions on provost and VP of student affairs is moving along. Thrilled to hear that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for President Parlange? All right, great. The last discussion item that we have is 2G, and that's policies for scheduled review in academic year 2022-23. So what we've asked of the team is that we have an understanding of what to expect and when to expect it. And so you'll see in enclosure 2G a list of the various things that we will have in front of us, whether it be for new policy or a renewal or a renewed possible amendments rather, sorry. Any questions on that document or what to expect? Michelle, anything you might want to share?
Do you have anything?
I would, I think,
GM.
yeah, the only thing I would add is that this is the list of known policies. That's all. So in the event that there's a policy that's developed that is a board level policy that we don't know yet, it may appear.
Yeah, this is merely a guiding document, not necessarily set in stone, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Dan, question, who determines when these are due for review or?
It generally, it's me.
So
Because
you want to review 4 in 1 month? Or
Yeah,
2 months?
generally, new policies that come up, we generally do 1 year, particularly if they're a brand new policy, we want to see how it's going to work. And otherwise, it's generally 2 years, unless it's a policy we think can be stretched out further. I think 2 years is a good turnaround time, but for ones that have operational things that we may have to adjust, 1 is better. We don't want to inundate the board or the administrative policy committee with a scheduled review over and over. So we want to be careful in that.
And we appreciate that carefulness.
Most certainly.
Yeah, President Pralanch.
Courtney, just wanted to add, I forgot to mention that we do have an interim dean for the University College for Academic Success, Professor Chris Hunter, who's prof in civil engineering.
Great, thank you.
Excellent choice. Another civil engineer. Good job, Mark.
It just happened.
Is there like a max we hit with these civil engineers, or no? We just keep going?
I'm counting myself as an ocean engineer.
Got it. All right, any questions on the policy calendar? And this is something we'll keep up. We want to make sure that we're spreading these out. We're not inundating. We don't have, 10 in one meeting, and at the same time being cognizant of things as they morph and change. All right.
I guess, Courtney, the only thing that I would add, I guess, is the fact that there are 4 coming due in November, and perhaps we should consider, being that we have to review these and read these, and I guess if there are many changes, then that's okay, but we want to really spend some time going through some of these policies, perhaps 4 in 1 month might be a bit much.
Yep. Recall, the November 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah, given that fact, Dan, it looks like we have none in September, and then we have 4 in November. I'm wondering if we could move 2 of those up.
Yes, we can do that. And the review date is also sort of it's an operations date, meaning that that's the date that we want to ensure the review is started. So you may see it prior to a review date, or the board may see it a little after a review date. But I'll look at those ones in November 23 and move them.
Yeah, even if it's just 2 out of the 4, that would be great. Spread it out a little bit. All right. Any other things that we want to cover before we adjourn?
Could I just give a kudos to our very own Mike McNally for being featured as one of the most influential men in Rhode Island?
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, I had to.
Where is that, Mike? Inquiring minds want to know.
I'm gonna send it to you, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Jay.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Jay. And I agree. He's pretty fabulous. May I have a motion to adjourn?
You may.
Thank you, Jay. Can I have a second?
Second.
Wonderful. I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion to adjourn is approved. The next URI Board of Trustees Governance Committee meeting is tentatively scheduled for February 2023. Thanks, everybody, and talk soon.